Marcus Webb stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his Manhattan penthouse, watching the city lights flicker like distant stars. At 33, he had everything the world told him to want: a net worth that had crossed 9 figures last quarter, properties on 3 continents, and a name that made boardrooms go quiet with respect. Yet as he stared at his reflection in the glass, all he saw was a stranger, hollow-eyed and unreachable. His phone buzzed with its usual cacophony: investors wanting meetings, lawyers needing signatures, society pages requesting comments on his latest acquisition. He silenced it without looking. Tomorrow would be Thanksgiving, a fact that meant nothing more to him than a day when the stock market closed and his assistant would be unavailable. The penthouse stretched behind him like a museum after hours, immaculate, expensive, and utterly devoid of life. The designer who decorated it had called the aesthetic refined minimalism. Marcus called it what it was: empty. 12,000 square feet, and he used maybe 3 rooms regularly. The rest existed as proof of something he could no longer remember needing to prove. He hadn't always been this way. There were photographs somewhere in storage, images of a different Marcus, younger, surrounded by family at cluttered dinner tables, laughing at jokes he could no longer recall. That was before the startup consumed him, before the first funding round, before the acquisition that had transformed him from a hopeful entrepreneur into a cautionary tale about getting everything you wished for. His parents had passed within a year of each other, just as his company went public. He'd been too busy for proper grieving, taking calls during the funeral reception, leaving early to catch a flight to Singapore. His brother, Daniel, had looked at him that day with something between pity and disgust. They hadn't spoken in 4 years now. Marcus wasn't entirely sure why, only that the silence had started as an argument about money. Wasn't it always about money, and had calcified into something permanent? There had been women, of course, beautiful, accomplished women who looked perfect beside him at charity galas and product launches. But they'd all eventually tired of competing with his phone, his schedule, his relentless absence even when he was physically present. The last one, Adriana, had left 6 months ago with a brutal honesty he grudgingly respected. "You're not actually here, Marcus," she'd said, standing in this very room with her bags already packed. "You're like a ghost haunting your own life. I don't know if you're running towards something or away from something, but I can't keep running with you." He'd wanted to argue, to explain that she didn't understand the pressure, the responsibility, the weight of decisions that affected thousands of employees. But the words had died in his throat because somewhere deep down, he'd known she was right. The loneliness had been gradual at first, like water rising so slowly you don't notice until you're drowning. Now it was his constant companion, more reliable than any person had ever been. He'd built an empire, but the foundation was quicksand, and he was sinking. His email dinged with a reminder about staffing changes. His previous cleaning service had been replaced, something about expanding to commercial accounts. The new service would start tomorrow. He barely registered the information. People came and went through his life like weather, necessary but ultimately interchangeable. Marcus turned from the window and walked through the penthouse's vast silence. His footsteps echoed on Italian marble floors. In the kitchen, a professional-grade facility he'd never cooked in, he poured 3 fingers of scotch, the same expensive bottle that had been open for months. He didn't even like scotch much, but it seemed like the thing a man in his position should drink. The liquor burned down his throat as he wandered into his home office, another monument to success. Awards lined the shelves: Entrepreneur of the Year, Forbes 30 Under 30, Innovation Leader. Trophies for a race he wasn't sure he'd wanted to run. His computer screen glowed with stock tickers, even now, even on a holiday eve. Money made more money while he slept, while he breathed, while he stood here feeling nothing at all. He thought about calling Daniel. His finger even hovered over the contact. But what would he say? For years of silence couldn't be broken with happy Thanksgiving. And his brother had made his feelings clear in that last voicemail. Call me when you remember what matters, Marcus. If you ever do. What mattered? The question felt archaeological, like excavating ruins of a civilization he'd once belonged to. Work mattered, he supposed. The quarterly earnings that determined whether he was winning or losing in the only game that seemed to have clear rules. But did it matter in the way Daniel had meant? In the way that filled the vast emptiness that had taken up residence in his chest? He drained the scotch and set the glass down harder than intended. The sound cracked through the silence like a gunshot. No one came to check on the noise. No one ever did. Tomorrow, the new cleaning service would arrive while he was at the office. He planned to go in despite the holiday, because where else would he be? They would move through his space like ghosts, erasing evidence of his existence, making everything pristine again. He wouldn't meet them. He never did. It was easier that way, maintaining the distance that kept his life manageable and hollow. Marcus returned to the windows, pressing his forehead against the cool glass. Somewhere in the city below, families were gathering. Tables were being set. Children were being tucked into beds, too excited about tomorrow to sleep. Life was happening in warm, cluttered spaces filled with voices and laughter and the beautiful mess of human connection. And here he stood, 33 years old, master of an empire, architect of his own isolation, wondering when exactly he'd stopped being a person and started being a portfolio. The city glittered back at him, indifferent and eternal, offering no answers. He didn't know it yet, but tomorrow everything would change. Tomorrow, a 3-year-old girl with tangled hair and a missing front tooth would walk into his immaculate life and refuse to recognize his walls. Tomorrow, loneliness would meet its match in a child who didn't understand that billionaires were supposed to be unreachable. Tomorrow, Marcus Webb would remember what it felt like to be human. But tonight, he was still alone, counting his billions in an empty mansion, the poorest rich man in New York. Rosa Martinez stood outside the towering building on Fifth Avenue, her daughter's small hand clutched tightly in hers, and tried not to let her fear show. The address her new employer had given her couldn't be right. This wasn't just a building, it was a monument to wealth so extreme it felt fictional. But the confirmation email had been clear. Penthouse level. Service entrance on the east side. Mommy, it's so tall. 3-year-old Luna gazed upward, her eyes wide with wonder. Does it touch the clouds? Almost, mi amor, Rosa murmured, adjusting the straps of her cleaning supply bag while trying to manage Luna's small backpack filled with coloring books and snacks. She'd had no choice but to bring her daughter today. Her neighbor who usually watched Luna on Rosa's workdays had gone to visit family for Thanksgiving. Rosa had called the cleaning service in a panic, explaining the situation, prepared to lose a day's wages she desperately needed. The client won't be home, her supervisor had said with uncharacteristic kindness. Some tech billionaire who works holidays. Just don't let the kid break anything, and we'll call it a training day. A billionaire. Rosa had cleaned houses for 7 years since arriving in New York from El Salvador, working her way up from small apartments in Queens to brownstones in Brooklyn. But this was different. This was the kind of wealth that made her hometown seem like a different planet, the kind that had seemed so impossible when she'd crossed the border with nothing but hope and her infant daughter. The service entrance led them to an elevator that required a key card. Rosa's hands trembled slightly as she swiped it, acutely aware of Luna's sticky fingers on the polished brass rail. The elevator rose so smoothly she barely felt the motion, the numbers climbing until they simply read PH. The doors opened directly into the penthouse, and Rosa's breath caught. She'd seen beautiful homes before, but this wasn't a home. It was a showroom, a photograph from a magazine where people didn't actually live. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the Manhattan skyline in all directions. Every surface gleamed. The furniture looked like modern art, all sharp angles and expensive fabrics in shades of gray and white. There wasn't a family photo, a stray magazine, or a coffee cup in sight. Wow, Luna breathed, slipping her hand free and taking a tentative step onto the marble floor. Mommy, is this a palace? Something like that, baby. But remember what I said. We look with our eyes, not our hands, okay? And stay close to Mommy. Rosa set down her supplies and pulled out the cleaning list. 3 bedrooms for bathrooms, kitchen, living spaces, home office. She had 6 hours to make a spotless place even more spotless. It seemed absurd, like polishing a diamond. Luna settled herself near the windows with her coloring books, content for the moment. Rosa began in the kitchen, wiping down granite countertops that showed no evidence of ever having been used. The massive refrigerator contained bottled water, expired takeout containers, and a single apple beginning to wrinkle. It was the saddest refrigerator she'd ever seen. In the bedrooms, she found king-sized beds with hospital corners, closets full of expensive suits still in dry cleaning bags, and the particular stillness of spaces that were maintained but not lived in. The second and third bedrooms didn't even look slept in, guest rooms for guests who never came. An hour into cleaning, Rosa heard Luna's voice floating from the living room. She was singing a little song in Spanish, something Rosa's mother used to sing, about birds and butterflies and sunshine. The sweet voice echoed through the cavernous space, and for a moment, the penthouse felt less like a mausoleum. By noon, Luna was getting restless. Mommy, I'm hungry. Rosa had packed sandwiches, but where could they eat? Every surface was pristine white, and Luna was 3, a recipe for disaster. She settled on the kitchen floor, spreading out a clean towel and unpacking their simple lunch: peanut butter sandwiches, apple slices, and juice boxes. This is a funny picnic, Luna said, giggling as she sat cross-legged on the towel. Inside picnic. The funniest, Rosa agreed, grateful for her daughter's ability to find joy in strange situations. This was Luna's gift. She made warmth wherever she went, even in this cold palace. They were finishing lunch when Luna suddenly scrambled to her feet. Mommy, look. A sad man. Rosa's heart stopped. The client wasn't supposed to be home. But there, standing at the edge of the living room, was a tall man in an expensive suit, staring at them with an expression Rosa couldn't quite read. This had to be him, Marcus Webb, the billionaire. She jumped up quickly, pulling Luna behind her. I'm so sorry, Mr. Webb. They told me you wouldn't be home. I had no childcare, and I could miss the work, and I promise we haven't damaged anything. You're having a picnic, he said slowly, his voice rusty, as if he hadn't spoken in days. On my kitchen floor. I know, I'm so sorry. We'll clean up immediately, and we'll go. Why would you eat on the floor? He wasn't angry, Rosa realized. He seemed genuinely confused. Luna is 3, Rosa explained, feeling her face heat with embarrassment. She's messy, and everything here is so white, so expensive. I was afraid she'd. But there's a table. He gestured vaguely toward the formal dining table that could seat 12. Several tables. Luna peeked around her mother's legs, studying the tall stranger with her characteristic fearlessness. Are you the prince who lives in the palace? Something flickered across Marcus Webb's face. Surprise, maybe, or pain. I'm not a prince. You look sad, Luna announced with the brutal honesty of children. Do you want a sandwich? Mommy makes good sandwiches. Luna. Rosa pulled her daughter back, mortified. I'm so sorry, Mr. Webb. We'll leave right now. But Marcus hadn't moved. He was staring at Luna with an odd intensity, as if she were a puzzle he was trying to solve. I left a meeting, he said, more to himself than to them. I was sitting there and I don't know. I left. The silence stretched uncomfortably. Rosa began hastily packing up their lunch, ready to flee. But then Luna did what Luna always did. She decided someone needed her help. She pulled free from her mother and walked right up to the billionaire, craning her neck to look up at him. She was so small, and he was so tall. If you're sad, you need a hug. Hugs fix sad. Rosa watched, paralyzed, as her 3-year-old daughter wrapped her tiny arms around Marcus Webb's legs, the only part of him she could reach, and squeezed. For a moment, nothing happened. The billionaire stood frozen, his arms at his sides, his expression unreadable. Rosa was already forming apologies, already calculating whether she'd be fired just from the service or blacklisted from the entire company. Then Marcus Webb's face crumpled. Just for a second, his careful mask fell away, and Rosa saw something raw and desperate underneath. His hands came up slowly, hesitantly, and he touched Luna's head with the gentleness of someone who'd forgotten how to touch anything gently. Thank you, he whispered, his voice breaking on the second word. Luna pulled back and beamed up at him. See? Better. Now do you want a sandwich? And impossibly, incredibly, Marcus Webb's mouth twitched into something almost like a smile. I don't think I've had a peanut butter sandwich in 20 years. That's too long. Luna grabbed his hand with both of hers. Come sit with us. Mommy, the sad prince needs a sandwich. Rosa wanted to protest, to maintain professional boundaries, to remember the vast gulf between her world and his. But Marcus Webb was already being tugged toward their makeshift picnic spot, and he was following, this billionaire in his $1,000 suit, letting a 3-year-old lead him to sit on his own kitchen floor. I'm Rosa Martinez, she managed, her voice uncertain. I really am sorry about all this. Marcus, he said, lowering himself awkwardly to the floor, as if he'd forgotten how people sat in casual spaces. And don't apologize. This is the most interesting thing that's happened in this apartment since I bought it. Luna plopped down next to him and handed him half of her sandwich. Here. You have to share at picnics. That's the rule. Marcus took the sandwich carefully, holding it like an artifact. He looked at it for a long moment, then took a small bite. It's good, he said, sounding surprised. Of course it's good. Mommy makes everything good. Luna launched into a rambling explanation of their morning, her day at home yesterday, her favorite color, purple, and her stuffed rabbit, named Captain Carrot. She talked the way 3-year-olds do, constant, enthusiastic, completely unconcerned with whether her audience was interested. But Marcus Webb was interested. Rosa could see it in the way he'd shifted to face Luna, the way his guarded expression was slowly softening, the way 20 years of armor was beginning, just barely, to crack. When Luna paused for breath, Marcus asked quietly, Captain Carrot, does he live with you? Yes. Do you want to meet him? He's in my backpack. Luna was already scrambling up, and before Rosa could stop her, she'd retrieved a threadbare stuffed rabbit, missing one eye, and presented it to Marcus with great ceremony. This is a very distinguished rabbit, Marcus said seriously, and Luna giggled with delight. Rosa watched this surreal scene unfold, her daughter and a billionaire having an indoor picnic on a kitchen floor, discussing the merits of a beloved stuffed animal, and felt something shift in her chest. She'd cleaned countless homes, seen countless lives through the intimate lens of their living spaces. But she'd never seen someone so wealthy look so desperately poor. The penthouse wasn't a home. It was a hiding place. And somehow, Impossibly, her tiny daughter had found the person hiding inside it. "Would you like to color with me?" Luna asked, already certain of the answer. "I have extra crayons." Marcus looked up at Rosa as if asking permission. She nodded slowly, still not quite believing this was happening. "If you'd like. If we're not interrupting your day." "No," Marcus said, his voice rough with something that might have been tears. "You're not interrupting anything at all." Over the next 3 weeks, Marcus found himself doing something he'd never done before. He arranged his schedule around Thursdays. Every Thursday, Rosa came to clean, and every Thursday, she brought Luna because her neighbor's health had worsened and childcare had become impossible. And every Thursday, Marcus made sure he was home. He told himself it was practical. He should meet the people working in his space, maintain some oversight. But in the early hours of those Thursday mornings, lying awake in his expensive bed, he admitted the truth to himself. He was waiting for a 3-year-old girl and her mother to bring noise and color and life into his sterile world. The second Thursday, he'd had pastries delivered from Luna's favorite bakery. He'd asked Rosa the previous week, noting it down in his phone with the same attention he gave to billion-dollar deals. Luna's face when she saw the spread had been worth more than any quarterly earnings report. "Conscious," she'd squealed, recognizing the sweet Mexican bread. "Mommy, look." He got conscious. Rosa had protested that he didn't need to do this, but Marcus had waved her off. "Everyone should have conscious on Thursday," he'd said, surprised by how much he meant it. By the third Thursday, they developed a routine. Rosa would work through the penthouse while Luna and Marcus would settle in the living room, the formal, untouchable living room that now had a designated art corner with a child-sized table and supplies Marcus had ordered. He'd expected to feel awkward with a child, out of his depth. But Luna made it easy. She didn't care about his net worth or his accomplishments. She cared that he could do funny voices for Captain Carrot and that he was learning to draw butterflies, badly, and that he listened when she told him elaborate stories about her imaginary friend, Princess Rainbow. "She lives in the clouds," Luna explained, carefully coloring a picture with her tongue poking out in concentration. "But sometimes she comes down to help people who are lonely." "Does she?" Marcus asked, stretching out on the floor beside her. His $1,000 suit was getting crayon marks, and he didn't care.
"Yep.
She can tell when people need friends. She's very smart like that. She sounds very wise." Luna looked up at him with those huge brown eyes that seemed to see everything. "Were you lonely? Before we came?" The question hit him like a physical blow. Rosa, dusting nearby, went still. Marcus could feel her holding her breath, probably ready to intervene, to apologize for her daughter's directness. But he found himself answering honestly. "Yes, Luna. I was very lonely. I think maybe I still am, a little." "That's okay," Luna said matter-of-factly. "Being lonely is sad, but it gets better when you have friends. Like us. We're your friends now, right, Mommy?" Rosa had turned toward them, her expression soft. "If Mr. Webb would like that, then yes, Querida. We can be friends." "Just Marcus," he said quietly, meeting Rosa's eyes.
Please."
Just Marcus. Something passed between them in that moment, an understanding, an acknowledgement that whatever was happening here had moved beyond employer and employee, beyond stranger and stranger. They were 3 people who'd stumbled into each other's lives at exactly the right time, even if none of them had known they were searching. As November turned into December, the Thursdays became Marcus's anchor points. He started leaving the office earlier on those days. Then he started working from home entirely on Thursdays. By mid-December, he realized he was checking his phone on Tuesday evenings, counting down the hours until Rosa and Luna would arrive. The penthouse was changing too. There were now pictures on the refrigerator, Luna's artwork, held up with magnets shaped like animals that Marcus had bought on a whim during a lunch break. Captain Carrot had his own chair at the dining table. The formal living room had a permanent art station, and the kitchen actually smelled like food now because Marcus had started learning to cook. It had been Luna's idea, sort of. She'd been telling him about the arroz con pollo her mother made, and Marcus had realized he didn't know how to make anything. Didn't even know how to start. So Rosa, on a Thursday when Luna was particularly absorbed in building a block castle, had shown him the basics. "You've really never cooked?" she'd asked, incredulous, as she watched him fumble with an onion. "My mother tried to teach me," Marcus said, the memory surfacing unbidden. "But I was always too busy, too focused on the next thing. I thought I'd have time later. And then she died, and there was no later." He'd said it plainly, the grief old enough that it no longer cut quite so sharp. "I have a lot of laters that never came." Rosa had been quiet for a moment, then gently took the knife from him and demonstrated the proper way to dice an onion. "Then maybe it's good you're learning now." They'd made spaghetti that day. Nothing fancy, nothing like the meals he charged to corporate cards at five-star restaurants. But eating it together at the kitchen island, Luna's marinara-covered face beaming between them, Marcus thought it might have been the best meal of his life. One Thursday in mid-December, Marcus arrived home to find Luna crying, her small face blotchy and miserable. He dropped to his knees immediately, his heart clenching with unfamiliar panic. "Luna, what's wrong? Are you hurt?" Rosa looked exhausted, her eyes worried. "She's okay. We had a stop at the hospital this morning, just to check up, but Luna hates the doctor. And then I got a call." She trailed off, and Marcus saw her blinking back tears. "What happened?" "Her school," Rosa said quietly, trying to keep her voice steady as Luna buried her face in her mother's shoulder. "The preschool she was supposed to start in January. They called to say they gave away her spot. I'd paid the deposit, but I couldn't afford the first month's tuition yet, and they couldn't hold it any longer. I thought I'd have the money by Christmas. I was so close, but..." Marcus felt anger flare in his chest, not at Rosa, but at a system that could break a woman who worked this hard, that could disappoint a child this precious. "How much?" "Marcus, no." "How much?" he repeated more firmly. "Please, Rosa. Let me help. I can't take your money. That's not why we're here. I don't want you to think. I don't think anything except that Luna deserves to go to school, and you deserve not to carry this alone." He was already pulling out his phone. "What's the name of the school?" Rosa looked torn, her pride warring with her desperation. Luna, sensing the tension, peered up at Marcus. "Are you going to fix it?" "I'm going to try, little butterfly. Is that okay?" Luna nodded seriously, then held out Captain Carrot. "He'll help. He's very brave." Marcus took the stuffed rabbit carefully, as if it were made of gold. "Then how can I fail?" 20 minutes and 3 phone calls later, it was done. Luna had her spot back, with the first 6 months paid in full. Rosa had cried then, really cried, and Marcus had felt something crack open in his chest that had been sealed for years. "Thank you," she'd whispered. Thank you. I'll pay you back, I promise." "No," Marcus said firmly. "This isn't a loan. This is what people do when they care about each other." Later that day, after Luna had recovered enough to want to color again, Rosa joined Marcus by the windows while her daughter sang to herself. "I need to tell you something," Rosa said quietly. "I look around this place. It's beautiful, Marcus. But it's like a beautiful cage. You've built these walls so high that no one can get in, but you also can't get out." "I know," he admitted. "I've known for a while. I just didn't know how to change it. How to be different." "You're already different."
"Look."
She gestured to the refrigerator covered in drawings, The art corner, the jacket he'd carelessly thrown over a chair, casual disorder that would have been unthinkable 2 months ago. This place is starting to look like someone lives here. It's starting to feel like it too, Marcus said. When you're not here, when it's just me again, it feels wrong now. Empty in a way it didn't before, because now I know what the alternative feels like. Rosa met his eyes, and he saw understanding there. We've been good for each other. You've been so generous to Luna, to me. But Marcus, you need more than just Thursdays. You need a life, not just a life support system that arrives once a week. I don't know how to do that anymore. I don't know where to start. Start small, she said gently. Call your brother. He's in your phone. I saw the contact when you were ordering those pastries. Start there. Marcus thought about Daniel, about 4 years of silence, about bridges he'd thought were burned beyond repair. What if it's too late? It's only too late when someone's dead, Rosa said bluntly. Everything else can be fixed if you're brave enough to try. That night, long after Rosa and Luna had gone home, Marcus stood at his windows and thought about bravery. He'd always considered himself brave, willing to take business risks, to make hard decisions, to bet everything on his vision. But that wasn't the same as being brave enough to be vulnerable, to admit need, to reach out across a gulf of silence and hope someone reached back. He picked up his phone and stared at Daniel's contact for a long time. Then, before he could talk himself out of it, he typed a message. I'm sorry. For everything. For the past 4 years. For being absent even when I was there. I know I don't deserve it, but if you're willing, I'd like to talk. I'd like to try to be your brother again. He hit send before fear could stop him. 3 minutes later, his phone rang. Daniel's name on the screen. Marcus's hand shook as he answered. Marcus. His brother's voice was cautious, uncertain. Is this really you? Yeah, Marcus said, his throat tight. It's really me. I know this is out of nowhere, and I wouldn't blame you if you hung up. Don't be an idiot, Daniel interrupted, and Marcus could hear the smile in his voice, could hear something that might have been tears. I've been waiting 4 years for you to call. They talked for 2 hours. Marcus told him about the emptiness, about realizing he'd built a prison instead of a life. He told him about Rosa and Luna, about learning to make spaghetti and color outside the lines and sit on the floor for indoor picnics. And Daniel listened, really listened, in a way Marcus had forgotten his brother could. I want to meet them, Daniel said finally. This woman and her kid who performed this miracle. It wasn't them, Marcus said slowly, understanding it as he spoke. They just reminded me that I was still in here somewhere. They gave me a reason to find myself again. Then I definitely want to meet them. And Marcus, I'm proud of you. For calling. For trying. After they hung up, Marcus sat in the quiet of his penthouse, but it was a different kind of quiet now. Not empty. Just peaceful. Luna's latest drawing was on the fridge, a picture of 3 stick figures holding hands, labeled in Rosa's careful handwriting. Marcus, Luna, and Mommy. He'd been completely alone. And then a poor child had decided he wasn't. Sometimes, Marcus thought, the smallest hands build the strongest bridges. Section 4. When Worlds Collide. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday, delivered by courier to Marcus's office. Heavy cardstock, embossed lettering, the kind of formal announcement that had once been routine in his life. The annual Peterson Foundation Gala. Black tie. December 20th. +1 welcome. Marcus stared at it, feeling the familiar dread curl in his stomach. He'd been avoiding these events for months now, making excuses, sending donations instead of attendance. These gatherings of Manhattan's elite had once felt like obligation. Now they felt like performing in a play he no longer believed in. But Thomas Peterson was more than a social connection. He was a legitimate friend, or had been. before Marcus had let most of his friendships atrophy. They'd gone to Stanford together, weathered the startup years together. Tom had been at Marcus's parents' funeral. He deserved better than another excuse. Marcus called him that afternoon. "You're actually considering coming?" Tom sounded genuinely shocked. "Who are you, and what have you done with Hermit Marcus?" I know. I've been terrible about these things." "Terrible? Marcus, you've ghosted the entire social circuit. People literally made a betting pool about whether you'd gone into witness protection." Tom paused. "But seriously, man, it's good to hear from you. And I'd love to see you there." What changed? Marcus thought about Rosa's words about building a life beyond Thursdays. He thought about Daniel, who he'd had coffee with twice now, awkward but genuine attempts at rebuilding. He thought about Luna asking him what he did when she wasn't there and not having a good answer. "I'm trying to remember how to be a person," Marcus said simply, "instead of just a bank account with anxiety." Tom laughed, but it was warm. "Best reason I've ever heard. Come to the gala. Bring someone if you want, and I mean someone you actually like, not some transaction disguised as a date." After hanging up, Marcus sat with the invitation. Bring someone. His mind went immediately to Rosa and Luna, and just as immediately he dismissed the thought. Why would they want to attend some stuffy charity gala? Why would he subject them to that world? But the thought wouldn't leave him alone. On Thursday, after Luna had tired herself out playing dress-up with scarves from Marcus's closet and was napping on the couch, Marcus found himself telling Rosa about the invitation. "It sounds very fancy," Rosa said, carefully folding laundry. Marcus had insisted she could use his machines for her own clothes, that she should stop wasting money at the laundromat. "You should go. It's good that you're seeing friends again." "I was thinking." Marcus hesitated, suddenly nervous in a way he never was in boardrooms. "Would you want to come with me? You and Luna? I know it's probably not your thing, and it's formal, and—" Marcus. Rosa had stopped folding, was looking at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "That's very kind, but I know it's weird. I don't even know what we are anymore. You work for me, except you feel like family now, and I don't want to make this awkward or inappropriate." "It's not that," Rosa interrupted gently. She sat down across from him, her hands folded in her lap. I don't belong in that world, Marcus. And Luna certainly doesn't. We'd be so out of place." "You wouldn't be out of place. You'd be with me." "Would I?" Rosa asked softly. "Or would I be the maid who somehow got above her station? Would Luna be the poor kid who doesn't know which fork to use? Because that's what they'd see, Marcus. Not people. Just problems that don't fit." Marcus felt the words like a punch. Because she wasn't wrong. He knew exactly the kind of judgment she'd face, the whispers, the calculated smiles that hid contempt. He'd seen it directed at others, had been guilty of it himself in his previous life. "I don't care what they think," he said. "But I do," Rosa said simply. "I have pride, Marcus. I've worked hard for everything I have. I've given my daughter the best life I could. But I'm not going to pretend to be something I'm not, to squeeze myself into a world that would only ever see me as the help." The truth of it sat between them, heavy and uncomfortable. For all that had changed between them, this remained. Vast, unbridgeable differences in their circumstances, their backgrounds, their places in the social hierarchy that Marcus had always taken for granted. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "You're right. I wasn't thinking about how it would feel for you. I wanted you there. Both of you. Because you're the people I feel most myself around." Rosa's expression softened. "That means more than you know. But Marcus, you need to be yourself in your own world too.
Go to the gala.
See your friends. Remember who you were before you locked yourself away. We'll still be here on Thursday. Luna stirred then, sitting up with her hair wild from sleep. Are we talking about the fancy party? You were supposed to be sleeping, Rosa chided gently. But I want to go to a fancy party. Luna climbed into Marcus's lap with the ease of long familiarity. I could wear my princess dress, the purple one Tia Maria gave me. Luna, we talked about this. But Mommy, I want to see Marcus in his fancy clothes. And dance. There's dancing at fancy parties, right, Marcus? Marcus looked at Luna's eager face, then at Rosa's conflicted one. There is dancing. And honestly terrible food that looks pretty, but tastes like cardboard. And boring speeches about important-sounding things. See, Luna announced to her mother. It sounds perfect. Despite herself, Rosa laughed. You have very strange taste, Mija. Over the next week, Marcus couldn't stop thinking about the conversation. He understood Rosa's hesitation, respected it even. But he also kept coming back to a simple truth. The gala would be more bearable, more real, with them there. And didn't he owe it to Luna, who'd shown him how to be human again, to show her a little magic? He approached it like a business problem, which was familiar territory. He made calls, pulled strings, made arrangements. And on the Tuesday before the gala, he presented Rosa with a proposal. Hear me out before you say no, he started. Rosa raised an eyebrow. That's not a promising beginning. I want you and Luna to come to the gala, but not as my guests, as my family. He held up a hand as she started to protest. Just listen. I called Tom, the guy throwing the gala. Told him my brother might be bringing his family. Which is true. Daniel's coming, and Sarah and their kids. Tom's arranging a kids' area, activities, childcare. Luna wouldn't have to sit through the boring parts. Marcus. And before you worry about dresses or fitting in, or any of that, I want to tell you something. Tom's wife, Jennifer, she grew up in the Bronx. Her dad was a janitor. She got a scholarship to Columbia, built a whole new life, but she never forgot where she came from. She runs a foundation for first-generation college students. And when I told her about you, about how hard you work, how amazing Luna is, she wanted to meet you. Rosa was quiet, processing. You told them about us? I told them you're important to me. That you and Luna have been saving my life, basically. That you're not just some random people I invited on a whim. Marcus leaned forward. Look, I know that world can be toxic. I know there will be people there who'll judge, who'll be awful. But there will also be people worth meeting. People who'll see you for who you are. And if anyone's an ass about it, well, that's what large donations are for. I can be very persuasive about who gets funding. A small smile tugged at Rosa's mouth. You'd weaponize your money for us? Without hesitation. That's possibly the most ridiculous thing you've ever said. Is that a yes? Rosa sighed, but her eyes were warm. Let me talk to Luna. If she really wants to go, if you're sure this won't be a disaster, maybe. But Marcus, I can't afford a gala dress, and I won't let you buy me one. What if I told you Jennifer has about 6 in her closet that she never wears, and you're roughly the same size? She already offered. Says if she can't wear them, someone should. You have an answer for everything, don't you? I'm very motivated. Marcus grinned. So, is that a yes? It's a we'll see, Rosa said, but he could tell she was warming to the idea. A very cautious we'll see. The day of the gala arrived bright and cold, Manhattan dressed in its winter best. Marcus picked up Rosa and Luna from their apartment in Brooklyn, the first time he'd seen where they lived. The apartment was tiny, a 5th-floor walk-up in a building that had seen better decades, but it was warm and full of life. Pictures covered every surface. Luna's drawings were taped to the walls. It smelled like coffee and cinnamon and home in a way his penthouse never had. "It's small," Rosa said, a bit defensively as she caught him looking around. "It's perfect," Marcus said honestly. "It suits you." Luna twirled in her purple princess dress, a confection of tulle and sparkles that had probably cost $30 and meant everything to her. "Do I look fancy?" "You look like royalty," Marcus assured her, and he meant it. She looked happy and excited and utterly herself, which was better than any expensive dress could achieve. Rosa emerged from her bedroom in a deep blue gown that Jennifer had indeed provided, and Marcus forgot how to breathe for a moment. She looked beautiful. She always looked beautiful. But more than that, she looked confident, nervous, brave, and wholly herself. "Too much?" she asked, catching his stare. "Not enough words," Marcus managed. "You look. Rosa, you're stunning."
She blushed.
"It's just a dress." "It's not the dress." The gala was being held at the Plaza Hotel because of course it was. As they walked in, Marcus felt Rosa tense beside him. The lobby was full of women in designer gowns and men in custom tuxedos, everyone looking wealthy and at ease in their wealth. He'd been one of them once, before he'd learned to see it from the outside. "We can leave whenever you want," he murmured to Rosa. "No questions asked." She straightened her shoulders. "I'm fine. Let's do this." Daniel found them almost immediately, Sarah beside him. "Marcus, you actually came?" His brother pulled him into a hug, then turned to Rosa and Luna with a warm smile. "And you must be the famous Luna and Rosa. I've heard so much about you." "You have?" Luna asked wide-eyed. "Marcus talks about you all the time," Sarah said, crouching to Luna's level. "He says you're an excellent artist." "I am. Do you want to see?" I brought my special crayon. The ice broken, they made their way into the ballroom. True to Tom's word, there was indeed a kids' area set up, complete with activities and friendly staff. Luna was torn between the grown-up party and the promise of crafts. "Go," Rosa told her. "Have fun. We'll check on you soon." The first hour was difficult. Marcus could feel eyes tracking them, could hear the whispers. He intercepted one particularly snide comment from a woman he'd dated briefly years ago, something about charity cases and how quaint, and responded with such cold fury that she literally stepped backward. But then Jennifer Peterson descended on them like a fairy godmother, and everything shifted. "Rosa, the dress looks better on you than it ever did on me." Jennifer linked arms with her like they were old friends. "Come meet some people who aren't terrible." She introduced Rosa to a group of women, some who'd come from money, others who'd made their own way, and Marcus watched Rosa bloom under their genuine interest. They asked about Luna, about her journey to New York, about her work, and they listened like her answers mattered. Tom pulled Marcus aside.
"She's lovely, man."
"They both are." "They saved me," Marcus said simply. "I don't know where I'd be without them." "I can tell. You're different. Better. More like the guy I remember from school." The evening unfolded in unexpected ways. Marcus found himself actually enjoying conversations, introducing Rosa with pride, watching Luna show off her craft projects to anyone who'd look. Daniel's kids and Luna became instant friends. Sarah and Rosa discovered a shared love of terrible reality TV. The disaster Marcus had feared never materialized, or rather, when it tried to, there were enough good people to drown it out. At one point, Luna tugged on his sleeve. "Marcus, can we dance?" "I'm not sure I remember how," he admitted. "It's easy. You just move." She demonstrated, bouncing unselfconsciously to the music. So Marcus danced with a 3-year-old in the middle of the Plaza Ballroom, surrounded by Manhattan's elite, and didn't care one bit who was watching. Luna laughed with pure joy, and Rosa watched them with tears in her eyes, and Marcus thought maybe this was what happiness felt like. Later, as the evening wound down and Luna dozed against her mother's shoulder, Tom found them again. "Before you go," he said, "I wanted to say something. The Peterson Foundation, we're expanding our scholarship program. We need someone to run it, someone who understands what it's like to work for everything, to not take opportunity for granted." He looked at Rosa. "Marcus mentioned you were putting yourself through community college?" Rosa nodded, suddenly alert despite her exhaustion. "How would you feel about a job? Real money, benefits, working with students. You'd be perfect for it." Rosa stared at him. What? Are you serious?" "Completely serious. Marcus didn't ask me to do this, by the way. He'd probably punch me if he thought I was offering charity. This is legitimate. You're exactly who we need." Marcus watched Rosa process this, saw the hope and disbelief warring on her face. "I need to think about it," she said carefully. "Talk to Luna, figure out logistics. But, yes, I'm interested. Very interested." In the car ride home, Luna asleep between them, Rosa turned to Marcus. "Did you know he was going to offer me a job?" "No," Marcus said honestly. "But I'm not surprised. You're incredible, Rosa. Other people can see it too." This is all so surreal. A few months ago, I was just trying to make rent. And now you're still you," Marcus said gently. "You just have more people recognizing what I've known all along." Rosa was quiet for a moment. "Thank you. For tonight. For pushing me out of my comfort zone. For all of it." "Thank you," Marcus countered. "For letting me back into the world." As he dropped them off at their building, Luna sleepily hugging him goodbye, Marcus felt something settle in his chest. This was what it meant to have people. To be part of something larger than yourself. To build a life that mattered beyond the numbers in your bank account. He drove home to his penthouse, but it didn't feel like a prison anymore. It felt like a place he lived between Thursdays, between visits with Daniel, between the moments that made up an actual life. He'd been completely alone. And then a poor child had decided he wasn't. And in deciding that, she'd taught him how to decide it for himself. Christmas morning arrived soft and gray, snow beginning to dust Manhattan streets. Marcus woke early in his penthouse, but for once, the silence didn't feel oppressive. His phone buzzed with messages, Daniel asking about dinner plans, Tom checking if he'd received the foundation's donor package, even a text from his former CFO noting that Marcus seemed different lately, in a good way. But the message that made him smile was from Rosa. "Luna wants to know if you have a Christmas tree yet. She's very concerned about this." Marcus looked around his living room. He did, in fact, have a tree now, a 7-foot Douglas fir that Luna had helped him pick out last week, insisting on the biggest one that fits. It was decorated with a chaotic mixture of expensive ornaments Daniel had sent over and handmade decorations Luna had created, including a truly alarming amount of glitter. "Tell Luna my tree is perfect," he texted back. "See you at 2?" He'd invited everyone for Christmas dinner, Daniel and his family, Rosa and Luna, even Tom and Jennifer. The penthouse that had once echoed with emptiness would be full of noise and children and life. Marcus had hired a caterer, but he'd also spent yesterday making arroz con pollo with Rosa's patient instruction, determined to contribute something made with his own hands. His doorbell rang at noon, earlier than expected. Marcus opened it to find Luna bundled in a puffy pink coat, clutching Captain Carrot and a package wrapped in newspaper comics. "We couldn't wait," she announced. "Mommy said we could come early to help. She's bringing the other stuff." Rosa appeared behind her, carrying bags of food and looking apologetic. She was up at 5. I couldn't hold her off any longer. "Come in," Marcus said, grinning. I was just sitting here being useless anyway. The afternoon unfolded in the way of good holidays, messy, imperfect, full of small disasters and perfect moments. Daniel's kids and Luna turned the living room into a pillow fort. The caterer's duck ended up slightly burned. Tom brought a terrible wine and an even worse joke about it. Jennifer and Rosa discovered they'd both taken the same poetry class at Columbia, 15 years apart. At some point, amid the chaos of wrapping paper and laughter, Marcus found himself standing at his windows again. But this time, he wasn't looking out at the lonely city. He was looking back at his home, his real home, finally, full of the people who'd helped him remember how to be human. Pretty different from last year, huh? Daniel appeared beside him, holding a beer. Last year I was alone, drinking expensive scotch I didn't even like, counting down the hours until I could go back to work. And now I'm standing here wondering how I ever thought work was the point of anything. Daniel clinked his beer against Marcus's glass. Character development. It's good to have my brother back. Luna ran up then, grabbing Marcus's hand. Come on. We're doing presents now, and you have to see what I made you. The gift wrapped in comics was a drawing, carefully protected between two pieces of cardboard. Marcus unwrapped it slowly while Luna bounced with anticipation. It showed the three of them, Marcus, Rosa, and Luna, standing in front of his building. Above them, in Luna's careful 3-year-old letters, Rosa had helped her write, "My family." Marcus's throat went tight. Luna, this is the best present anyone's ever given me. Really? She beamed. Mommy said you don't have a lot of pictures of people you love, so I made you one. She's right. I didn't, but I do now. He crouched down to her level. Can I tell you something? A few months ago, I was very sad and very alone. And then you decided we should be friends.
Do you remember that?
When we had the floor picnic.
Exactly.
And that decision, your decision to be my friend, changed my whole life. You're a very powerful person, Luna Martinez. She giggled. I'm just Luna. You're never just anything, Marcus said seriously. You're extraordinary. As the party continued, Marcus caught Rosa's eye across the room. She mouthed, "Thank you," and he shook his head. "Thank you," he mouthed back. Later, after the guests had left and Luna had fallen asleep on the couch mid-game, Rosa and Marcus cleaned up in comfortable silence. I got the job, Rosa said suddenly. Tom called this morning with the official offer. I start in January. Rosa, that's amazing. Marcus pulled her into a hug, then pulled back, suddenly uncertain if that was appropriate. But Rosa was smiling, her eyes bright. It's good money. Real benefits. Luna can stay in her preschool, and I can finally move us to a better apartment. Maybe even save for her college. You deserve all of it. You've worked so hard. I know, Rosa said simply, and Marcus loved that about her. She didn't diminish her own accomplishments, didn't play small. But I also know I wouldn't have gotten here without you. Without Thursdays. Without you showing me that there were possibilities I hadn't imagined. You showed me the same thing, Marcus said. Different possibilities, but just as important. Rosa was quiet for a moment, then asked, So what happens now? I won't be cleaning your apartment anymore. And Thursdays were the structure for all of this. Marcus had been thinking about this too. I guess we figure out what we are without the excuse of employer and employee. We figure out if we're actually friends or if it was just circumstance. I think we're friends, Rosa said softly. I think we became friends the moment Luna decided you needed a sandwich. Best executive decision anyone's ever made in this penthouse. They both laughed, and then Luna stirred on the couch, mumbling something about Princess Rainbow and Christmas cookies. Rosa went to gather her up, and Marcus helped them into their coats. Same time next week, he asked. Even though you won't be working here anymore. Maybe we could take Luna to see the windows at Macy's? I've never actually done that. You've never seen the Christmas windows? I've walked past them 1,000 times, but I've never stopped to actually see them. Rosa smiled, understanding what he meant. Then yes, next Thursday, we'll show you how to actually see things. After they left, Marcus wandered through his penthouse one more time. Luna's drawing was already in a frame on the mantel. Captain Carrot had been temporarily forgotten on the couch. The art corner was covered in Christmas wrapping paper and glitter. The kitchen smelled like Rosa's rice and his slightly burned attempt at dessert. It was messy. It was imperfect. It was home. Marcus picked up his phone and opened his photo app. He'd been taking pictures all day, something he never used to do. Luna making a ridiculous face. Daniel's kids building their fort. Rosa laughing at one of Tom's terrible jokes. These were his people now. This was his life. He thought about the Marcus from 3 months ago, standing at these same windows, drowning in loneliness and success. That man would barely recognize him now. That man had believed wealth was measured in dollars and influence. He'd been so poor in all the ways that actually mattered. A text came through from Daniel. Best Christmas in years. Let's not wait so long next time. Then Tom. Jennifer wants to steal Luna. Just FYI. Then Rosa. Luna says Captain Carrot wants to come visit next Thursday too. Apparently, this is non-negotiable. Marcus smiled, typing responses to each, feeling the warmth of connection, of mattering to people and having people matter to him. This was wealth. This fullness, this sense of belonging, this knowledge that he was part of something larger than his bank account. The snow was falling more heavily now, transforming the city into something clean and new. Marcus pressed his forehead against the cool glass and let himself feel grateful for Luna's courage, for Rosa's wisdom, for his own willingness to be saved. He'd built an empire thinking it would fill the emptiness inside him. But empires were cold comfort when you were alone. It had taken a 3-year-old girl with tangled hair and a missing front tooth to teach him that the real wealth was in connection, in love, in the small moments that made up a life. Luna had decided he wasn't alone. And in making that decision, she'd given him permission to decide it too. To reach out. To risk rejection. To be vulnerable enough to need people and brave enough to let them need him back. Marcus pulled out his phone one more time and opened his notes app. He typed, "Things I learned from a 3-year-old. Peanut butter sandwiches taste better on the floor. Every sad person needs a hug. Friends are family you choose. Glitter makes everything better. You're never too old to color outside the lines. The best gifts are made with love, not money. It's never too late to stop being lonely. Sometimes the smallest people have the biggest impact. Home isn't a place, it's the people who refuse to let you disappear. You're only as alone as you decide to be." He saved the note and looked around his penthouse one last time. Tomorrow he'd call his company's HR department and start the process of stepping back from daily operations. He'd hire a CEO who actually wanted the job, who thrived on the relentless pace. He'd remain chairman, stay involved, but he'd make space for the life he'd built these past months. There were people to see, relationships to nurture, a goddaughter, because that's what Luna was now, in all but paperwork, who needed someone to believe in her the way she believed in him, a brother to reconnect with, friendships to rebuild, a whole life waiting to be lived, if he was brave enough to live it. Marcus Webb had been completely alone, trapped in a prison of his own making, drowning in success and starving for connection. And then a poor child with a stuffed rabbit and an enormous heart had decided he wasn't alone anymore. She'd been wrong, of course, he had been alone. But she'd also been right, because her decision had shown him the way out. Sometimes all it took was one person refusing to accept your isolation, one small hand reaching out, one act of uncomplicated kindness to crack open a door you'd thought was sealed forever. The snow continued to fall, and Marcus continued to watch it, but he wasn't counting the minutes until he could leave or escape or disappear into work. He was simply being present in this moment, in this life, in this home he'd finally learned to build. His phone buzzed one more time. A photo from Rosa. Luna asleep in bed, clutching Captain Carrot, a smile still on her face. The caption read, "She says tonight was the best Christmas ever. Thank you for being part of our family." Marcus typed back, "Thank you for being part of mine.
See you Thursday."
Same time, different everything. And for the first time in years, Marcus Webb went to bed not lonely, but looking forward to tomorrow, knowing that the best wealth he'd ever accumulated wasn't in any bank account. It was in the heart of a little girl who decided he deserved saving. And he'd been worth saving after all.
The end.